I just want to say hello and that I will get started with today's live soon. I just want to give other people a few minutes to join in and join the live, and then I will have Rachel join me, and then we will talk today about what you can do when you're feeling stuck with your language learning. Okay. And so I see someone has sent a request to join, and I'm sorry, but I can't add you. I'm going to add Rachel shortly to join me on the live. So I will be speaking with her today about today's topic. And actually, how did I? Ah, that's how it works. Hey, Rachel.
Hey Danielle, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Awesome. Yes, I just spent a few seconds like, how does this work? I've ever invited another person to a live. I've always just kind of joined. So, yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Well, you did it, so great job.
Exactly. So, if any person thinks that they don't understand technology, it's okay. I'm with you when it comes to Instagram Live. So I figure I give people a couple of minutes to get to join us. But I thought while we do that, we could talk a little bit about why we decided to talk about this specific topic.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So Rachel and I have been hosting a Clubhouse chat, a weekly chat, and we just had our last one on Monday. But a question that we received very often was, like, I feel stuck. What can I do so that I can stop feeling stuck? Or what can I do to improve my level? So that was a question that we got very often, and I think you mentioned with your students as well.
Yes, so for those of you who don't know, I run a group conversation class every week, and I was talking to them one day about the structure of our classes, and I was asking them if they ever feel stuck themselves because they're all intermediate learners, and they've made the jump from beginner to intermediate, and now they're trying to go from intermediate to advanced. So in talking to them, I actually did some research about this topic specifically so that I could help them get from intermediate to advanced.
Okay, that's really great. That's really awesome. And I just saw a couple of people said hello, so I want to say hello back. I saw your message and thank you for joining us. And today we are talking about what students can do who are feeling stuck, in their language learning. Maybe you have studied for a few months, maybe for years, but you could feel like, your level has just reached a point, but you kind of want to go a little higher. And so that's what we will be discussing today, and mostly talking about what you can do so that you can continue to advance and really get to where you want to be. And one thing I just want to share quickly before we talk about that is goals, because each student has a different goal. You have different ideas in mind of what you want. Maybe you want to be able to speak fluently and what that means. Some students say, oh, I want to understand a TV show or a movie. So everyone has different goals. So while we're discussing what you can do, I really also want you all to think about your goals and really why you want to improve your level. Like, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to get to? Because, if you just want to be able to give a presentation, well, that's very different from being able to understand a Marvel movie without.
Right.
Very, very different. However, the tips that we will share today, I think, can help you regardless of what your goals are. But again, I just want you all to keep that in mind that, you have different goals, and then just think about what your goals are so that you can begin to really focus on them. Okay. So, one of the first things that Rachel and I have both talked about that I think is really important to learn and to understand to help you improve your level is something called collocations. So, collocations are these words, well, a simple, easy definition are words that you see used together often. So, like for example, make noise. You have the verb make, and then you have the word noise, the noun. And so we use those two together quite often. And so that is an example of a collocation. And so when you learn more collocations and become more familiar with them, that should really make it easier to understand us when we speak, but then also that can help you make less mistakes. Because I find that, and Rachel, let me know if you agree, but I find that sometimes when a student is speaking, it's not that their mistake is a grammatical mistake. It's just that for me, when I hear them use certain words together, I think, yeah, no, sorry, I wouldn't use those words together.
Yeah, exactly. I think for us, having grown up speaking English, there are certain phrases that come to mind that just sound more natural than others. So, like you were saying, a lot of times students aren't grammatically incorrect with what they're saying. They will just combine words that, say, you or I wouldn't naturally combine ourselves. So I think the importance of collocations and other fixed expressions is, if you want to speak in a way that will show you're an advanced student as opposed to an intermediate student, learning those fixed expressions is really important.
Exactly. Yes. Collocations and fixed expressions. I just said like make noise. I gave that as an example of a collocation. And then when you said fixed expression, I was actually looking at a sheet that I have been sharing with some of my students. And one of the fixed expressions was, it's never occurred to me. And
Mm.
those words, they're words that my students have seen, but when they see them together, it's like, wait, I don't understand. Why did you put those words together? And with these fixed expressions, they're very like set. We don't really change them too much. And so that's another thing I have noticed with students is that, maybe they learn a phrase like that or a fixed expression like that, but then they may kind of adjust the order of the words. And so
Yeah.
then again, it's like, oh, okay, sorry, it's not that you're using this because they may use the expression correctly while speaking, but just because they maybe like it never occurred to me. If they say it occurred never, I will then think, oh, sorry, no, now I need to correct you. And it's just because it's how we're used to hearing them because they're so fixed.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Mhm.
agree.
And so collocations and fixed expressions. These are two things that I believe that a student needs to learn and to become more focused on in their studies as they try to advance their level. Now, you're probably thinking, how? How do I learn collocations? Like, Danielle, great, but where do I find them? So, one example, one way to find collocations, and my favorite way, honestly, is the Oxford Learner's Dictionary. I use this one quite often with my students. You can go online and just type Oxford Learner's Dictionary, and you can go to that website. And if you type in a word, if it has, some collocations, some very common ones, they'll list a few of them, and you can check to see like which verbs or which prepositions are commonly used, like which words are commonly used together. So that's what I use. I use that quite often with my students. I
Mm.
will just say that they show a few like for free, but then like you have to pay a little more to have access to all of the collocations. But even just a few that they list on their page for words, I think is a really, really good start.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
I would also say, I know for some students, they find it helpful to look up collocations based on the verb. So you could always, I mean, and I do this all the time when I'm working with students, you could always simply do a Google search of collocations with the verb get. And then you would see get up, get dressed, all these different phrases that are put together that begin with the verb get. So if you're that type of learner who prefers to um, group new vocabulary in that way, that could be really helpful. Um, with collocations, there's also a series of books by Cambridge called English in Use,
Mhm.
and they have specific um, textbooks related to different types of English. So they have an English collocations in use. So working with a book like that might be helpful. If you're trying to learn, say, phrasal verbs and idioms, they have books for those as well. Cambridge does. I also like the textbook series English for Everyone,
Mhm.
and they again have a series of books based on what it is that you want to learn. So they also have phrasal verbs and idioms, things like that.
Mhm. And yes, I just want to add that I have used like the collocations in use because they have like beginner, intermediate, advanced collocations in use books or the like vocabulary in use books. I've actually have used those books with some of my students, and I will also just add that I think it's a really great resource. Mhm.
Paula, I just want to agree with you in that it definitely minimizes mistakes and increases your vocabulary. Absolutely.
Mhm. And I saw a great question, and I'm going to come back to this, but I just want to say it now so we can both be thinking about it, Rachel. But I saw this question from English with, is it Evie? Sorry if I mispronounced it. But what would you suggest to do for basic students or like beginner students to make the class more interesting? So something that we can both think about, but I promise we will get to that one before we finish up today. Okay. And so, and then also with fixed expressions, as Rachel mentioned, just doing a Google search, that's honestly how I found like a really great list of them. Because I'll be honest, I never really thought of these expressions as fixed until I started teaching. And then I thought, oh, yeah, I guess we do use these this way. We do like, we don't really change them. And so I looked, just search for, fixed expressions, like fixed English expressions, advanced expressions. And I even noticed that if you're like preparing for certain exams, you can find lists of fixed expressions. But even if you're not, if you're planning, even if you're not, there's still exams like the CAE or the IELTS. So if you look for fixed expressions for those exams, you can probably still find a list that you can have, even if you're not going to take that exam.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so the next thing I want to talk about a little bit is speaking. Because, well, you study and you study, but if you don't speak and really give yourself that practice, it can be really difficult because even when you know what to say, it's like your brain just takes a little more time to really kind of put those together. And I know that students say, well, who can I speak to? Like, I don't have a person to speak English with, or maybe I can't afford to take lessons on a regular basis. And that's okay. There are so many things you can do to speak and to speak at home. One thing that I think is even more helpful for intermediate students who want to become advanced is to like copy, or we say like mimic speakers. So, you have so many resources like YouTube videos, videos like this one, Instagram videos, like, or even a TV show. If there is a TV show that you really like, you can focus on one person, one character, and you can copy what they say, but then also even try to match their pronunciation. So it really gives you that speaking practice, but then it also gives you some pronunciation practice. And you can even record yourself while you're doing it to really kind of hear yourself speaking later if you want to kind of use that for pronunciation practice. So that's one thing I think is really helpful when you're trying to become more advanced, because then also you're probably going to like mimic or copy a person who is an advanced speaker or maybe even a native speaker. So they're going to then use those fixed expressions, those collocations, and even more.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of going off of what you were just saying, I think sometimes students don't understand the value of recording themselves because they think, well, what is the point? What am I trying to get out of this? So if you are mimicking someone, whether it's someone on TV or someone in a YouTube video, if you mimic what they're saying and record yourself, you can compare your recording to what you've just heard and see where your pronunciation is really good, where it could use some improvement. Are there certain words that are harder for you to say than others? So I do think recording yourself is really important. If you don't necessarily know what to be looking out for, then definitely practice this idea of mimicking so that you can see, okay, how did I do compared to this person? Um, I also love telling students to work on tongue twisters. Tongue twisters are a really great way to work on your pronunciation, and I'm actually going to share a video on this next week. But it really forces you to slow down so that you are pronouncing each word in the tongue twister correctly first. And as you speed up, you want to make sure that you are continuing that correct pronunciation. Thank you, Joanna, by the way. um, and then I would also say when you're just around the house by yourself, talk to yourself in English. Maybe go through what you have to do for the day. You could go through a to-do list. You could talk to yourself about how you're feeling. And one benefit of that is you want to try to describe to yourself as much as possible what it is that you're talking about in English. If you get to a point where you're not sure what the English word is that you should be using, practice working around that. I think often students will kind of rush to their translators and try to figure out what to say, but it's really important to learn how to express yourself even if you don't have the right words. And this even happens to those of us who speak English fluently. I will often forget a word and I have to figure out, okay, how do I explain what I'm trying to say without this one word I can't remember or I don't know? So I think that would benefit students a lot as well.
Hmm. I totally agree with you. That is actually a suggestion that I make to students all the time. They think I'm weird, but I tell them all the time, like, just talk to yourself. And as you mentioned, you can start with simple things, just like your to-do list, like what do I need to do today? Or at the end of your day, you can just kind of review what happened. Just talk about what happened during the day just as a way to give you that practice with speaking. And again, you can record yourself doing that. You know, if you don't want to do it with a video, you can still just record yourself just with the audio. That's totally fine because I know some people don't really want to like watch themselves. They feel a little insecure about that. And that's okay. Like sometimes when I see my face on screen, I'm like, wow, okay, I'm tired of looking at myself. So I totally understand that feeling. But you can still use audio recordings. That is just a great way to give you that practice. And then, you know, if you're concerned about what others may think, just tell them, you know, it's your English homework or, you know, you have your phone in your hand. So just tell them that you're, you know, recording a reminder for later or something. So if you're just concerned about that, I always suggest using your phone as your way to say, "Hey, no, I'm doing something. I don't look like funny while talking to myself."
Yep.
So that's a great suggestion. And even also like reading out loud.
Mm.
I find that students, you know, tend to read silently. I mean, I do it, we all do it, but that's just another way to really give yourself some practice with speaking. You know, it's not a conversation, but you're still speaking. You're still like, you know, making connections in your brain, you know, to your mouth. And then with these words, you know, you're making those connections. And that's really what's important because when you do need to have a conversation or need to give a presentation or something, it won't feel like you're starting from the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. And then, really quickly, because I mentioned reading, collocations again, because that's where I notice collocations quite a bit. So if you're reading out loud, you're probably going to notice them a little bit more. But that's just my suggestion there.
Yeah, that's a really good point because really exposing yourself to any English every day will help you to notice the phrases that come up often, the words that are connected together often. And I mean, a lot of students, they are exposed to slang words or idioms when they are watching movies, watching TV shows, listening to podcasts, and you'll find the same things with regards to collocations. So as long as you are constantly giving yourself access to English and listening to it, taking it in, you will become more exposed to those commonly common phrases that are put together, the common fixed expressions, etc. Yeah.
And I just want to read this commentary. Paula said, I talk to myself on the streets like if I am being interviewed for someone else. I'm sure I look crazy, but it pays off. And
That
Paula,
is
I do
awesome.
it. Totally do it too.
Also, hi Kia, it's been so long. Sorry.
But yes, and actually, I do that like interview myself in my head. So that's just like another suggestion, you know, like Paula said, instead of interviewing yourself in your head, do it out loud. Ask yourself some questions and then answer them. You can totally do that. I mean, again, don't worry about how you look. It's no one really cares.
They won't remember it, 5 seconds later.
They really won't. And then, so like I said, said, when you're reading, you will notice quite a bit these collocations. And Rachel just said, if you're, reading or listening or engaging with English daily, you're going to see things over and over. And one thing I suggest is that, like, if there are certain topics or subjects that you're really, really interested in, kind of like focus on those quite a bit. I'm not saying that you can't read about other topics, but like, for example, I'm a big soccer fan. I like to give this example, big soccer fan. But to be honest, I couldn't talk about the sport. I couldn't because I had no idea like what I mean, because they say pitch. We don't say pitch in the US. So I was like, why are they saying pitch? Like I don't like a pitch is like when you throw in baseball. Things like that. But the more I watched soccer, the more I read articles about soccer, the more I, just watched different programs, the more I began to understand the sport and I was able to actually talk about it. There's this expression, park the bus. I had no idea what park the bus meant. Like, park the bus. I mean, I'm sure you're hearing that now. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, I have no idea.
And it took me, like, hearing that quite a bit to really finally understand it. And just to quickly explain, park the bus is just like a type of defense that a team plays to prevent another team from scoring. It's like they just strongly defend to prevent another team from scoring. And so, what I'm just saying is that if there are certain topics that you're into, whether it's a sport, whether it's like gardening, or if you're even into like exercise. If you read about these things, listen to like different material about these things, or watch videos about these different topics, you're going to hear a lot of phrases and a lot of words used over and over again. And then you're going to start paying attention to these collocations and these fixed expressions. And then you'll be able to talk about them even more and much easier than in the beginning.
That was a great example using the soccer. I like that.
Thank you very much. Oh, yes, I sound like an expert now when I talk about it.
Well, I learned something new today. I had no idea what parking the bus was.
I know, like literally parking the car.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So Sabina's asked, can you tell me, please, is it beneficial to record your voice to improve your speaking skills? And yes, we talked about that a little bit. Like, if you record yourself, you can listen. You can listen to the recording and you can kind of like analyze or make notes of your pronunciation and what you've done there. But then also, if you're copying or mimicking someone, you can compare your voice to theirs. And even just to make sure you've even, like, not only just for pronunciation, but even just make sure you haven't missed any words. Like, did you say exactly what that person said?
Yeah. And I actually think in talking about specific topics and learning vocabulary that way, that was actually going to be my main answer to the question about how to help beginners, how to make classes more interesting. I always learn what interests my students have and incorporate those interests into my lessons to make them more engaging. Because, I think it's important for students to be well-rounded in their vocabulary. I don't think they should just learn about vocabulary and phrasal verbs having to do with soccer if they absolutely love soccer. It's important to learn other topics. However, you can also, if soccer is something they like, you can incorporate soccer into other topics. So I try to make sure that I consider the students' interests in each of my lessons. I don't know if you had something else you do, Danielle.
Actually, that is a really great answer, and I'm with you on that because with my students, I don't have, I mean, I have an idea of what I want all of them to be able to do, but with each student, I'm very focused on their individual interests and their individual goals. And so then that's how I'm able to, help them learn vocabulary, help them speak as well. Because especially with beginners, it's all about like, how do I want to say it? Like helping them understand that it's okay to be a little frustrated
Mm.
because it's like they know what they want to say but they can't say it, and so it's just all about like starting with their interests because then they're going to be more likely to try, in my opinion, and they're going to be a little more engaged in the lesson versus if I just say, okay, you're going to learn um, the the conditional tense and yay, okay, that doesn't work. Like, it's like, okay, honestly, something I do is I'll just send them like, maybe some phrases, something like that. But then I'll ask them questions to then get them to use them. But I'm gonna ask them questions about their interest so that they're more likely to have answers. They're more likely to talk about it. And then again, it's also how they learn vocabulary too, because as you mentioned, students can kind of like talk around what they're going to say, and it's like, okay, now this is the vocabulary word you're looking for. And now let's talk a little bit more about some other words that can also help you, or some other phrases that can help you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm also just going to read this comment from Sabina. Nowadays, I am learning collocations as well as vocabulary from articles and reading topics, but usually I cannot use them when I speak because I'll worry about making a mistake. Okay, so how do you get rid of that worry? How do you lose it? Well, this is different for every person, but my main answer to every person, every student who has asked me this question, is just that to understand that everyone makes mistakes. I make mistakes. I may have even made a few during this live today. I'm sure if I go back and watch this, I'm going to find a mistake. So everyone makes mistakes. And I understand, that it can make you feel anxious, make you think that other people aren't going to understand you. However, in my experience, if a student makes a mistake where maybe I'm having a little trouble, I just ask. Or, I really can't think of a time where someone made a mistake where I was like, oh, no, sorry, I don't understand at all. And then often I'll just ask clarification questions. But for me, just what I always tell people is just that we all make mistakes. Everyone does it. And so just, getting used to that, getting us a little more comfortable with making mistakes is really one way to just kind of let that worry go away. What about you, Rachel?
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, a lot of us are perfectionists. We want to get it right every single time. But as Danielle just said, she and I make mistakes and we're fluent in the language. So if we make mistakes, then for sure English learners should recognize that it is okay to make mistakes. It's just part of the learning process and we improve based on those mistakes. So there's really nothing wrong with having mistakes.
And then something else I know that I do, I talk to myself a lot in my head. I know every person is different, but if someone could walk inside my brain, it's just thoughts just running around. And so I often just think about what I want to say about certain topics. Like I have ideas in mind about like what I want to say about certain things. Kind of like how we were talking about interviewing ourselves. Like I'm constantly interviewing myself. And so if you if you are the type of person who, because I know some people can't hear their thoughts. I don't know how that's possible, but some people just don't.
Danielle, can you excuse me for 1 second?
Yeah,
So
sure.
sorry.
Oh, it's okay. So as I was saying, there are some people who don't really kind of hear their thoughts, I've read. But if you're like me, and you have a lot of thoughts, something else you can do is just kind of think about, like, what you want to say about certain things, about certain topics, or ask yourself certain questions, and then answer them yourself. And in that way, when you are in a situation where you're having a conversation, or you're meeting people, then you can kind of have your answer prepared. And it doesn't mean you're going to say exactly what you thought, but you'll feel a little more confident, a little more comfortable, I think.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Was my friend okay?
Oh, it actually wasn't her. Someone was knocking at the door, and I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was really confused.
Okay. I thought it was Rachel's baby. And Sabina, you're very, very welcome. And then also, I just have one last question. Let's see. Okay. I have a question here. Someone said they have like a lot of trouble with using like do and is, like do, does, is, are. And this again made me think about, well, one, like singular versus plural, but then also collocations as well. Because, there are some words that we were more likely to use the verb to be with, and then there are some we're more likely to use the verb to do with. So, as Rachel mentioned earlier, if you kind of search for collocations with certain verbs, then you can find those, like, collocations with the verb to be, collocations with the verb do, or the verb make or take. And that also really, really helps. And then just to quickly say, with do and does, it's just really all about singular versus a plural. So, I do, he, she, it does. Or, well, with I is am, but you are, but he, she, it is. And I will just say that I know sometimes it can take a minute, especially with the verb to be, to help yourself remember, like, which one do I need to use. Okay, so now I just want to talk a little bit about resources. So earlier I mentioned that the Oxford Learner's Dictionary is one resource that I love to share with students as a way for them to look up collocations. And another thing I like to suggest is to watch interviews, because interviews are just a conversation most of the time. And so if you go to YouTube, you can find so many, whether it's, like a popular chat show here, like for example, the Ellen Show. Um, who are the late night guys now? Like Jimmy Fallon. Is really popular here. If you look for videos of their interviews, you can usually find like some like 4 or 5 minute videos where they're having conversations with celebrities usually. But I think it's just a really good way to really just help you get used to like people having a conversation, because I know that like speaking is one of those things that's really important to students. But then also, while you're watching these videos, take note, what type of words are they using very often together? Which ones are being commonly used together? Because honestly, that's usually how we learn words. That's how we learn collocations.
I was just noticing Paula also mentioned Jimmy Kimmel and David Letterman.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Jimmy Kimmel and David Letterman are also really popular, and I think Stephen Colbert. Yeah, there are so many, and even like there are certain magazines that will have interviews, or even like celebrities interviewing each other. I think GQ does that quite a bit. I have to search. Actually, I have to just search for a few more. Maybe make like a resource or something available just to give some other tips. And what about you, Rachel? What would you like to share?
So I had already mentioned mine earlier, but I'll just say them again in case anyone missed them. So I had mentioned the textbook series, English in Use by Cambridge, and also the textbook series English for Everyone, particularly if you are trying to learn collocations and fixed expressions. And I think in general, we might not have talked about specific resources, but hopefully we've covered a lot of great tips in general to help each and every one of you get out of that place of feeling stuck with your improvement in your English.
Mm-hmm. And then I just saw this question, like how to boost a student's motivation. And for me personally, it just goes back to setting goals. You know, if you have set goals, then you know what you want to accomplish. You know what you're working toward. You know, and a goal doesn't have to be something huge. It really doesn't have to be. I mean, a goal could just be, you know, being able to understand 5 minutes of a TV show without having to read the subtitles. A goal could be being able to, you know, talk for 1 minute without stopping. You know, a goal doesn't have to be this huge thing like, you know, speak fluently for 2 hours about some random topic. No, it does not need to be like that. And Rachel, what about you? What would you share?
Um, I guess I would say, well, I mean, honestly, I was thinking exactly what you said about, oh yeah, we just talked about goals at the beginning of this. You need to remember why you're learning, because if you lose sight of that, you're going to lose motivation. And honestly, this can go for anything that you're trying to do. Here, of course, we're talking about learning English. So you need to make sure that you have a good reason for you to be learning English. And you need to use that to motivate yourself. Now, of course, even if you have a good goal, sometimes you get stuck and sometimes you feel lazy or you're, you're frustrated that you're not improving as quickly as you want to be. I would say in those moments, um, it's okay to take a little breather. And what I mean by that is just, um, maybe take a day off. I'm not saying take a month off, but just take a day to just relax and rest and pick it up again the next day. Tell yourself, okay, I'm going to just take a break today. Tomorrow is a new day and I'm going to start again tomorrow. And I think that's perfectly fine. Sometimes we just need to step away from what it is that we're doing, refocus ourselves, and then continue.
Mhm. That's a really great answer. And another thing I agree with you on is yes, it is okay to take breaks. Is that like you said, don't take a break for like a month or three, but you know, a day or two is totally fine. And so now I'm just going to kind of just wrap up and just again just say that collocations and fixed expressions are two things that we both agree on are very important to like focus on and to study and to learn as a way to help you advance your English level. With speaking, mimicking, or like copying people, whether it's like, I mean, you can copy me if you want, or, you know, someone on YouTube, a TV show character, anyone like that, you can copy, you know, them, what they say, just kind of like record yourself saying what they say. You can read out loud and you can also just talk to yourself. It's really okay. We will not judge you because, I mean, I do it, so it's okay. And so, and those are really just the few things that, the few tips that we have to help you advance your level. And so, thank you so much for joining. And also, I just want to respond. I saw a message about a speaking lesson that we did. Rachel and I, we were doing a clubhouse event, giving students a chance to practice their speaking, but we have now stopped doing that. This last Monday was our last one because, you know, it's the end of the summer almost. So that is why we stopped doing that. But if you ever joined us, thank you so much for joining us on Clubhouse. And thank you so much for joining us here live on Instagram. And I will save this chat here so that, you know, if you missed something or just want to hear us talk again, then you're more than welcome to do so. Okay. What, Rachel, would you like to say anything before we finish?
Oh, I was just going to say thank you, Danielle, so much for having me. I think this is a really important discussion, and hopefully, those of you who joined us were able to get something good out of it.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining, Rachel. I really appreciated it. And it's always a great time chatting with you. And I hope
Absolutely.
that all of you were able to learn something from us today. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.